Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. Unlike most of these interviews, you started and helped take a company public, Yext. You started this pretty early for tech companies, right? There probably weren't that many and definitely not that many going public. Walk me through what you were doing before Yext and what led you to starting the company in 2006.
Yeah, we started Yext when it was not popular to start technology companies. I had been starting different companies and different projects pretty much since I was a teenager, everything from doing a bunch of landscaping projects to running a gym out of my dorm room in college, and then started a motorcycle shop while I was in college. When I wrapped up school, I went to work at a company called Traffics. This was in 2001. They were a smaller public direct marketing company, and I was doing what was referred to then as database marketing, which was basically combining a bunch of like offers and deals with email lists of people and more or less spamming people. And did that really well, got to know the founders of that company really well. And we went on to found a company together in 2003 that was packaging privacy protection software and selling it directly to consumers. We built that to about 20 million of revenue. I was like very much the junior partner, had a little slice of it and wanted more of my own thing, and got to know Howard Lerman really well. And Howard was running a company. He had built a couple of companies, and he was running a company that one of my mentors, who was also his mentor, and that guy, his name is Jay Greenwald, really got us together. And we started really spending some time together. And then in 2006 started what became Yext.
Great. And where were you at the time? Were you in New York yet?
Yeah, so I'm local. I grew up just outside the city. At the time, I was living in New Jersey. I was living in Edgewater. We started the business out of like right by Columbus Circle. We had an office in 1845 Broadway.
Awesome. Whose idea was this? Did you link up and then come up with the idea, or did one of you say, hey, it's go time, I've got the thing?
So Howard had this idea around the gym and health club industry and basically more efficiently driving them customers. At that time, a big way gyms would acquire customers was just through people on the street and all kinds of in-person marketing stuff, and thought there was a more efficient way to drive customers. And so we started with launching a site called gymticket.com, where we were basically driving customers to gyms and health clubs across the country on a performance basis.
Interesting. Okay. Walk me through, what is the tech startup scene in New York back then? How many startups were even there? How many funds?
I mean, there was like nothing at that point. So this was the end of 2006. Everyone was still like going into finance. It was all like finance, media. There was starting to be like a little bit of ad tech stuff. Maybe Union Square was sort of starting around then, but there was very few funds, certainly not anything that we really came across on a regular basis. There was no, at least for us, no real tech community.
Interesting. I guess you maybe helped start it. So when I had messaged you on X and said, will you come on the pod to talk about your fundraising experience? You said, Nicole, there isn't really a spicy story. It was pretty straightforward. What does that mean? Because you successfully raised from Sutter Hill, but how much? What was that process like?
Yeah. So in today's terms, we had done the pre-seed ourselves, and we put, I think it was like around $250,000. And I'm going to get some of these details wrong, but it'll be directionally correct. For us, we were meat and potatoes, just trying to get the company profitable. We actually got cash flow positive by month 9. And once we started to see a little bit of bigger opportunity and realized we need a little capital to go after it, Howard and I had both known one of the Sutter Hill partners. His name was Andy Sheehan, who had put a bunch of money into Howard's last company, and he had looked at acquiring my previous company. And Andy would, every time he was in New York, it was like every 3-4 months, would swing by office and like wondering what we were up to. And he more or less was offering us a blank check for whenever we were ready. The only spicy part of doing that was I was responsible for all the legal and finance in the early days and just cleaning up what we needed to do to actually close a formal round.
Yeah.
And so
Do you remember how much you raised? And was the YC Safe a thing back then?
it was not a thing. It was a price round. It was a little over $1.5 million. I honestly don't remember what the valuation was.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
so Andy basically did what today would probably be considered a seed. At the time was a
Mhm.
Series A. And then I think it was around like a year and a half, maybe later, something like that. As we were starting to get some like real momentum and traction and ready for a little bit more money, he put in another $3.5 million, something like that.
I was going to ask you about that. So there isn't a ton online between '06 and '09. And it looks like the gap there is you went from like C to Series C. What was announced was a Series C with Sutter Hill, IVP. What was going on over those couple years?
Yeah, Sutter did the A and B. We didn't like run a process or anything like that. And then the C was a very different story. So we had sort of figured out this thing selling leads to like gyms and health clubs. And then we started expanding that and built this pay-per-call business where local businesses like a veterinarian, an auto repair shop, a chiropractor were paying us for driving them new customers. That worked really well. And we were able to do it with them on a performance basis. And so long story short, we built that to about 20 million of revenue. By 2009, and we decided at that point we were ready to we like did this under a rock. We in fact tried to have the outward perception of there's not much going on here, and we decided that we want to do something a little bit more public in 2009, and we were ready to start like really growing. We're thinking about raising some more money, and we were really like expanding the team and wanted some help recruiting. And so we decided to do a little competition for startups that TechCrunch was running called TC50, which they did for a few years. And part of it was like the startups would come up on stage and do a live demo. And so we were demoing our call technology, and it worked really well. People were really impressed, but there's a few finalists we were with. And then they did a round of questions, and someone, I think it might have been Marissa Mayer, asked Howard how much we were doing at that time, how much revenue we were doing. And these were all early stage startups. And I think everyone out there was out at the Moscone Center, I believe. I think all the investors and everyone certainly thought they had a handle on all the earlier stage companies, and certainly anyone that was doing any like sort of material revenue. And so Howard just said in the microphone, answered, "We're doing 20 million of revenue." And you could hear the whole place get like silent. Fast forward, like basically the next 2 weeks, we were staying in that Four Seasons in Palo Alto, and we basically meeting with IVP and Excel and all these different firms. And we would like start with one partner, and then we go back to the hotel and we think we're like done and flying back to New York. And then they'd ask to meet with the whole partnership team. And it was like day after day, we were pretty much checking out of the hotel like every 2 days and then checking back in. We met a bunch of firms and ultimately decided to go with IVP, and they led that Series C at the end of 2009.
Was that your first time just picking your head up and doing the roadshow? I mean, you didn't really need to, right? Because you had Sutter Hill, so you weren't getting any inbound. I'm assuming you guys kept a low profile, so you just did what was efficient, right? And didn't try to shop it.
Yes, that was the introduction to us of running a real process.